First up is Irene Lanzinger, who is president of the BC Federation of Labor and the chair of the Columbia Institute on Minimum Wage. Irene.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for inviting me, Columbia Institute, to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is wages and good wages for workers. And there's good news and bad news on wages. The good news is that we're going to get a $15 minimum wage in this province. Not as quickly as most of us wanted, but we're going to get there. And when we get to a $15 minimum wage, more than 400,000 people will have their wages lifted above the poverty line. It will be, over the next couple of years, the largest single wage increase for the largest group of workers ever in BC. And so that's a good thing. That's the good news. And people worked hard on it. I want to acknowledge the thousands of people who worked on this campaign. And the BC Fed was kind of the face of the campaign, but we had a very broad coalition of anti-poverty groups, of politicians, of young workers, of civil society groups who worked with us on this campaign. And they showed up at bus stations and SkyTrain stations and handed out our material, which I'm trying to get rid of. You'll see it on the table there. And we are committed to continuing that work to get to a living wage. The bad news is that that $15 at the moment, under the current rules, does not apply to everyone. There are exemptions to the minimum wage. And there are three main categories that are exempt. There are some smaller groups, but the three main groups are workers who work in restaurants that serve liquor servers, farm workers, and live-in home support workers. They can be paid less than the minimum wage. And it feels, I think, to some people who know about this that those exemptions have been around for a long time. But I want to remind you that the liquor server wage was introduced by the Liberal government in 2011. We have actually only had a separate wage for liquor servers for 7 years. And it's really time to get rid of it. And the reason we need to get rid of it, and the reason it's really important to get rid of all of these exemptions, is that they are racist and sexist. The fact is that every one of these jobs, of the three main categories, is dominated by women and or people of color. These are jobs that are largely done by women or people of color. It's a really good example of systematic discrimination, of systematic racism and sexism. So, for example, 81% of liquor servers in BC are women, 81%. And we have seen such egregious abuses of the liquor server wage. The fact is that many restaurants pay the liquor server wage even in shifts when liquor is not served. They pay it just straight out to all of their servers, whether they serve liquor or not. You only have to serve liquor, under the rules even, you only have to serve liquor in one shift to be paid the liquor server wage for the entire week. Most people who work in this industry are not aware of their rights, and even if they are not prepared to stand up to the boss for some very good reasons, if the liquor server wage is abused. So 81% women, a very difficult job serving in restaurants, and a job that's very important in a province that relies in large part on the tourist industry for our economy. This is a big piece of our economy. Serving in restaurants is an important job, and it can be very difficult. There's part-time work, split shifts, short call-outs, last-minute shifts, tip theft, illegal charges for breakage are common and routine problems faced by liquor servers. There's also research that shows that reliance on tip income leaves workers at a higher risk of being sexually harassed at work. Servers report sexist dress codes, we've seen that, feeling like they have to endure sexualized behavior from customers with little recourse for abuse. All experiences that largely women have in the serving industry. Other provinces like Alberta have eliminated the liquor server wage, and it's time for us to follow suit. Farm workers, an industry dominated by workers of color, they can be paid a piece rate based on how much they pick rather than for how long, and they are not guaranteed minimum wages. As I said, they're predominantly workers of color. Many are new Canadians and may have limited confidence in their English, and that makes it more challenging for them to know their rights. Piece rates have lagged behind other minimum wage increases, and they are often left out when wages go up. And crops are variable. Picking is harder earlier in the season than at the end of the season. It's harder earlier and at the end, and there are many, many workers who only earn minimum wage in the middle of the season when the crops are at their peak. And these workers are also exempt from other employment standards that guarantee rights. They aren't eligible for overtime pay, they aren't eligible for holiday pay, their overwork and injury is common in the farm industry. It's hard to enforce as well and often abused by employers. There are inaccurate scales, poor record keeping, unregulated bin sizes, rejection of crops due to quality, and all of those can eat into the wages of workers in this industry. It is also difficult work and dangerous work, and it produces one of the most basic things we need, the food we eat. We've seen many deaths in the farm industry, right? So it is dangerous work, and it produces our food, right? And workers harvesting that food deserve to be fairly paid for the hours they work. It's time for the piece rate to go. Live-in caregivers, also predominantly women, predominantly people of color, also exempt from the minimum wage. And also, we've seen egregious abuses in that industry, with people subject to abuse from their employers, and often difficult for them to exercise their rights. They're new to the country in some cases and unaware of their rights, or find it very difficult to exercise those rights. So although there are many problems with the minimum wage, we have the chance to level the playing field on this issue. The Fair Wage Commission is going to review exemptions. We've made a very strong case to them. We think that the exemptions should all go away. There will be an enormous pushback from the restaurant industry, which is quite a powerful lobby group in this province. But we've created an email campaign. You can send a message to Minister Baines by visiting our website at fight15bc.ca. So please do that. I encourage you to send a message to Minister Baines saying that the exemptions to the minimum wage should go. The minimum wage should be just that, a wage that every single worker in this province has the right to earn. And we need to fight for that. So please join us in putting an end to the exemptions to the minimum wage and fighting for a living wage. Thank you very much.